Hi guys, this is Rizzo with Full Awakening, and I am here to bring you episode 19 of Stories of Awakening. Today we're meeting with Matt Coffman, who is an entrepreneur, the co-founder of TPA, which is Therapy Practice Accelerator. He's a musician and a very, very dear personal friend. So one of my oldest friends that I still hold close. And I'm just so excited to be here with him today. So I'm going to hand the camera right over to Matt and ask him to share with us where he's at right now and also what his definition of awakening might be.
Sure. Hi, I'm coming to you from Nashville, Tennessee, Music City, very proudly. So on a very, very hot day here in the middle of July. And definition of awakening. Yeah, I'm glad we start with the easy questions. So, I mean, to me, awakening indicates becoming more able to work with the fullness of whatever's presenting right now. So having more presence, meaning more ability to detect and experience whatever's arising, and less identification with things that shadow or confuse whatever is in this moment. That to me is what I would say.
Oh, just the word shadow brings up so much, doesn't it? I'm curious to hear your definition now of shadow.
Shadow. Okay, good. I'm glad. So this is how this is going to go. We're just going to ask really simple questions. Got it. And so shadow. I would say shadow has multiple forms. One major aspect I think we all can kind of identify or sort of recognize is where it's things that parts of ourselves that we've disowned and don't want to look at closely. So they go underground and then they emerge as the inverse of themselves. That's the shadow instead of the actual figure. It's the inverse. That's one aspect of it. I also think of shadow in terms of the brighter the light, then the more that shadow comes into high relief with that light. And so it's a natural aspect of whatever we identify as God, spirit, truth. The closer we approach that, the more the things that aren't in harmony or in alignment with that will be the shadow that we have to deal with. So that's another aspect of shadow, is how it emerges in relationship to and the intensity of our exposure to the light or truth or God or whatever.
Yeah. A term the other day that came up when I was in session was the light and the dark rise together. And I think I've definitely had that personal experience and also communal experience that when there's great acts of light or great experiences of light, that the shadow rises in even more intensity. And I do think that it's a very wise way to interact with shadow, to sort of bring it close and not disown it, but to claim it as a part of our experience and to try to find that vulnerable piece that was buried that caused it to rise as it does and operate as it does. Because I think for me in the beginning part of my own process, shadow felt very adversarial. It felt like something I was trying to get away from me, trying to clear myself of. And over time, my practice has developed more into trying to get it to come closer and closer and closer, even and especially when I feel a lot of fear towards it, like trying to bring it really close so I can really see it. And often as I bring it closer, it gets smaller, right? It becomes smaller and younger and more vulnerable and more wounded of aspect of myself. But anyway, we could go on that for a while because I do have some questions for you about that. But we're going to go to a simpler question now, which is simply your story of awakening. I feel like I was there for part of the beginning of the story, but I don't know your full story from you. So if you could share with us sort of anything that you feel like sharing about your relationship with spirituality or your relationship with awakening process and where you feel like you might have had some beginnings or some moments that kind of turned your path in a new direction.
When I look back, one of the main moments that I know for a fact I experienced something greater than what I thought was possible. And after that point, there was a definite arc that, shifted. Was actually I played trombone in middle school, and we moved around a bunch in my sort of like fifth, sixth, seventh grade years. And so I spent 1 year in Tulsa, Oklahoma, and the school I was at was very much nicer than the school I'd been at in Knoxville, Tennessee. So we went from Knoxville to Tulsa, and somehow this school was crazy. And specifically the symphony orchestra was like, we had like 9 people in a tiny, linoleum room in the suburb of Knoxville. And then I go to this school outside of Tulsa, and it was like, the Philharmonic Orchestra or something. So I had a few experiences playing with that very large and well conducted group. But specifically, like, I remember playing the theme song to the Magnificent Seven, and I'm part of the trombone section, and had the experience of just being the music, becoming fully myself, but also the orchestra and the music itself and the vibration. And it was that it really went deep for me, that experience of music as a vehicle for spiritual experience and expression. And I also, had challenges. My father, who passed away several years ago, he struggled with alcoholism and, narcissistic behavior and so forth. And so I had this real other thing going on, which, like, the father energy in my life had a real heavy illness to it, or darkness to it. And so sort of, as much as I contacted the challenging aspects of that, sort of that experience in the band, it was sort of the opposite, And so I think that was part of it too, is the intensity of the challenge of dealing with my father and his own illnesses and struggles. So when I was primed, talking about light and dark and how they're in sort of some kind of a complementary relationship, in experiences like that, however many people there were in that band, maybe 100, and this huge ocean of sound that we were generating, and this beautiful sort of, and the Magnificent Seven theme song is very triumphant and exciting, and just high energy. And so this, this drive to the light and this intensity of the darkness at that time really came together for me in that moment. And so it was like an escape from that challenge. And it was also just beauty and contact with beauty. And it was contact with something that felt to me true, as far as the human spirit's ability to rise above whatever constraints. So that was really, I had a sequence of things like that, playing music in that band, that I would cite as pretty serious awakening experiences for me. And that was in 6th grade, the last half of 6th grade, the first half of 7th grade, because that's when we were in Tulsa. And from that point forward, my arc was very different. And I was definitely on the quest from that point forward, for sure.
Wow. So music as the avenue of awakening. And how long did you play trombone, and when did you switch to guitar?
All middle school. I played trombone, 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th grade. And then when it came time to high school, I did not have any interest in doing band. And at that point, I shifted to martial arts. So I was doing karate and taking martial arts really seriously. So that was sort of the spiritual path, embodied spiritual path from that point forward. So I sort of did a handoff almost. Like, I started martial arts right in the summer before high school, I think. And then that same summer went to like 1 day of marching band and was like, oh no, this is not for me at all. Bailed, didn't play trombone from that point forward. And then it took a couple of years before I reconnected through the guitar into music.
Mm-hmm. Were you in Nashville at that point?
Yeah, we moved to Nashville when I was in 8th grade. So that was all the martial arts and the abandonment of the trombone, and then the guitar, all that took place when we were living here.
Wow, that's such a huge transition, it sounds like. I mean, I think that's a huge transition anyway for people to go from 8th grade to high school, as far as just being that move from childhood into young adulthood. And it can be like such a dislocating summer somehow.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like I had some very serious issues. My first like intense depression, hit me during that time. I mean, maybe not my first, but it was definitely a dislocating, ungrounding time. So to have that in conjunction with a move, in conjunction with a severe, not severe, but intense new direction as far as activity and expression is concerned, how did you navigate that? Did you feel like there's parts of you that you left behind as that middle schooler that you had to go back and recollect at some point? Or were you able to sort of like stitch together that bridge fairly fluidly while you were walking it?
I think that when I went back to music a couple of years later, that was a lot of the recovery of the things that I had left behind that I wish I'd continued with, or not. Since I recovered them, it wasn't a big deal. But if I hadn't repicked those up, I think it would have been a bit of a unfinished business I would have had to figure out at some point. But I really got a lot of purpose out of the martial arts, and it kind of provided me with the meaning I was looking for. So, I went into it so full power, like both feet in, and just, it was like, I'd really wanted to do it before, but the timing was right, my age and what was available, the access, my parents' ability to like give me that opportunity and drive me to classes, at the school and stuff like that. A lot of different things had to come together at that right moment. And, I feel like that was the way I handled that transition, was to go deep into the martial arts as something to anchor in that was outside of the middle school, high school dichotomy, and so I had that as a through line for quite a while after that, through into college. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. When did you, oh, there's so many questions. I want to talk about devotional container that just came up. So you were one of the most driven people I've ever met, as far as like your ability to be committed to a path. And I'm interested in hearing more of this backstory that I haven't actually heard before. I mean, we've known each other for almost 20 years, right? And I feel like we've gone really deep, but we haven't gone back very much. Like, we haven't talked about our childhoods or like where we've come up from and stuff like that as much, which is interesting to me now to think about. But knowing you as an adult and knowing like how like determined and able to commit to structures you are, which is so unique. It really is, especially in the transformational community. I feel like a lot of people hold that freedom, the need for freedom so hard that they self-sabotage in a way. Like, they won't allow themselves to be in some sort of form that holds them, right? And just some sort of like regimented, like, every day I'm going to do this. And one of the things, TPA, Therapy Practice Accelerator, is this company that you run, which is amazing. And I'm now a part of it, and I'm working with your group. And I myself am like, I want to adopt this way that Matt has of being able to create structures and stick to them. So I'm getting to my question. This is my question. So just in this little story that you've told of your work with the trombone and your work with music, and even your awakening moments that you found through music, and then this like complete shift to martial arts, and then, picking up of music, I'm curious for you what it feels like to be Matt Coffman and to be completely committed to an activity or a practice, and then to find that edge where it's time to move on to something different, or to change, or to shift the routine, or shift the activity. Well, what does that bring for you? Like, how much do you fight that, and how much are you just in the know when you get there and you're like, like you described this move to martial arts being like, nope, band, not going to happen, martial arts now. Like, how crisp is that for you?
Mm-hmm. Well, first off, I'm going to come off as a massive nerd here, but so be it. So I was the 8th grade band student of the year, even. Like, I was the #1 band student at my middle school. And so to go from #1 student in the band, according to the band teacher, to then bail on it entirely within a month or two, the only reason that made sense is because I'd had this long, sort of real clear connection to the martial arts as a useful tool in my, like, I knew it was something I needed. So that had been planted a long time before that. And I think I also just intuitively knew that, like, brass marching band, that wasn't really the path somehow. I just knew that sort of at a soul level, but I also knew at the soul level that the martial arts was really important and held some important lessons for me. So it was coming from this like intuitive in touchness, able to really listen to that nudge and that whispering. And I'm grateful that I was sort of in touch with that, because I didn't have any regret ever. I've never had a regret about not continuing. Man, I really wish I'd kept up with trombone. Man, I could rip some trombone right now. It's like, I don't feel that at all. And I also subsequently didn't continue with the martial arts past college, right? So, and I also don't have any regret for that. And having watched friends who've stayed with it and Like it's great for them, beautiful, but then I'm just really clear that that served a bridge moment for me for my high school years into college. And then after that, I had other things to go deeper into, you know? So that inner knowing, being in touch with that, and also like I would just say like music itself, like that's one of the things I look at now. If I were to say, okay, where does this ability to insert myself into a disciplined container, like music itself, I think that music, we can talk about it almost as its own beingness. Like it's sort of like any instrument is an infinity, but then music itself is the larger infinity. And then the universe is the larger infinity. And then spirit God is the largest infinity. But definitely music is a, very powerful infinity in its own. And it has certain qualities that it teaches those who are open. And discipline is just one of those, because there's a structure to the way that we arrange music in the West. But if you're in the East, and any of the different cultures of different musical systems, they also have a structure. So somewhere music has structure, music has, component pieces that you have to become fluent in order to express yourself using music as the vehicle. And so I'm always, I've had a lot of moments of looking back at and being in awe of how much music teaches. And it's not even that you realize you're learning it until well after. And I think it's music itself, not even sort of a specific teacher of music or specific type of music or specific song, or, you know what I mean? I think it's just music itself, like if you're available to it, guide you to certain realizations and types of growth. So I would cite a lot of that aspect of myself directly to music as an apprenticeship I've been engaged in for a long, long time. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And I think there's a lot of cultural wisdom in why we have little kids learning music. Like there's like, oh yeah, it'll teach. Same with the martial arts. You want to learn discipline. It's true. Like these methodologies do teach certain kinds of qualities of long-term perspective and consistent, disciplined activity, not just in your head, but actually in your body and over. So if you match consistent discipline with long-term perspective, because you can't play all of music in one day or 1 week or 1 year or 10 years. It's a deep teaching. It really is.
Yeah, I think what's interesting to me as I think back, because of course in my past, I was a ballet dancer. So I danced through my entire childhood, and that was part of my big break. I danced until I was 14. So from like 4 to 14 or 5 to 14, I danced all those years. And then at that brink, I went free fall from dance and very quickly found theater and started acting. But I think that when I think back on that, I often think back on, I'm so glad I learned the discipline of, like you're saying, consistent practice. My dance teacher used to say, if you miss 1 day of class, you'll notice in your body. If you miss 2 days of class, everyone's going to notice. Mm-hmm. And so there's this fear factor also of, you have to keep up. And also what I'm interested in is this idea when you talk about the music and the martial arts and this knowing, we're going to go back to the knowing in a moment, but this feeling like you're assembling a great meal, like a great feast, and that these are very important ingredients in this very simple but elegant meal that you're putting together. And that they're not the whole meal, right? That music wasn't the whole meal, martial arts wasn't the whole meal, but these were necessary ingredients you had to source. And I feel like in some disciplines, like for me, the way that I was raised in ballet was that it was like the only thing, right? Like we hosted other people, gymnasts would come to our classes and ice skaters would come to our class, but we are not allowed to do those activities. Like we were becoming prima ballerinas, like we were becoming core dancers. And that had to be the focus. And so at some point that feeling of choice can get sucked out of the discipline. And I think that when the sense of choice gets sucked out of the discipline, then that freedom gene that I think a lot of us have starts to really fight back. And so what I remember a lot of is this inner struggle of like, I have to go to class, but I don't want to go to class. And this this fight, kind of an unnecessary, expensive energy inside the discipline, inside the structure that I think, for me at least, carries forward into my adult life and is still something that I sort of work with even as an entrepreneur, which I think so many of us in the transformational community are realizing, okay, we kind of have to be entrepreneurs. If we want to create the new world, then we have to create. And if we're going to create, then we have to create for ourselves from our hearts. And that means being able to run our own businesses. And
Mm-hmm.
so that's this huge awakening that's happening inside the transformational community, all these like spiritual people. And I put this in parentheses, we're all spirit and we're all people, right? But these people who consider themselves kind of above or beyond or on the side of business, now having to enter into the business realm. And part of this is we need structure. We need to create structure for ourselves. And how funny it is that we fight structure even within the structure that we've created for ourselves, and how ridiculous that is. So I'm going to get back to that, but I want to go back to knowing, the knowing. Can you track for us where you gained a sense of inner knowing? Like what does that feel like in your body now? And do you think that you always had that? Like, did you just come in with that? And as a child you had that, or do you think you developed it over time?
I probably had some of it, but I also definitely developed it. I think something that I'm realizing I did a lot, it was kind of funny earlier today. I really relied on different types of music a lot in my, teens as a source of staying in contact with that knowing, is what I see it as now. So like I played baseball, also, never seriously, but for fun or whatever, little league and all that kind of thing. And when we would, and I was I had a lot of performance anxiety around like going to a game, like, oh, and I would listen to different types of, usually like movie soundtracks, like classical pieces and things like that, to try to like get in the zone, that kind of thing. And earlier today, I remembered one of the ones that I really connected with was the Olympic themes of John Williams. He composed these themes for like the NBC network when they were, filming. And there was this one album called Summon the Heroes. And so I was listening to it today, and I hadn't listened to it in probably 20 years. It was weird, it just came to me. And right there was that, like, it has a certain vibration, those pieces. And then for me, it really taps the knowing. Like it helps me be like, oh yeah, this is aspirational in a way that I also have something that's, it's calling to my own desire to, reach some kind of a height. In this case, it was for the Olympics. In my case, it's something else. But so I think there was like a relationship between some inner knowing that did exist for sure. But I would think almost anyone has it if they haven't had it beaten out of them, and even if it's been attempted to beat out of them, it's still in there. But then realizing early on that I could sort of work with that, sort of as like it was there. It was sort of like you're lighting a fire, so there was a little ember there, but if I worked with it a little bit, and I could do that in different ways, whether it's journaling or playing music or listening to music, visualization, whatever, exercise, all, martial arts, going, there are lots of different things. You're basically trying to take that ember and turn it into a really big bonfire in your heart. And I think somehow I just intuited that was possible very early. And so that's part of it. That's part of the knowing, is not just the knowing, but the ability to like take that little ember or whatever you feel, that little nudge, but then like protect it, and then really, harvest it or increase it into intensity so that it's there pushing you through whatever obstacles always are going to arise.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. I think, I perceive people often in like these layers, right? Kind of layers going towards depth. And I think the knowing exists kind of at the very center of that, or the deepest depthest part. Depthest is not a word, but you understand, like all the way deep down. And usually on top of that, there's like some turbulence, right? So there's some emotional turbulence it's like the turbulence of the ocean. It can take us up and it can take us down. And, it's very reactionary to the environment. But I feel like the knowing is beneath that. And that's something that's hard for people a lot of times, to get beneath the turbulence and into the knowing.
For sure.
And then on top of that turbulence, often we have like the face that we show the world, right? So we all like to show a pretty face. We want to be calm. We want to be, living up to our image of ourselves in public. And so it's interesting because as you talk about the music, I'm thinking back on my own life. I'm like, yeah, like there's certain pieces of music that certain times in my life, like I would just play certain scores constantly, right? And those pieces of music would reflect back to me something that I was feeling kind of in that weird in-between place between the turbulence and the knowing, that sort of dipping into the inner depth, but also being mindful of that turbulent center that maybe I wasn't showing the world. Do you find that music that doesn't have words to be more evocative than music that does have words?
Depends on the song. Not necessarily, but for me, that I at least early on, it was music without words, but I would say at this point, I could probably benefit from all kinds of music, some of which have words, some which don't. I think it's really just about, does that piece of music really take you someplace, or are you able to work with it in a way that, you know, anything, any tool, whatever we're talking about, if it has no effect on you, if basically you're able to do it without the tool, it doesn't, you know, then okay, cool. But so you're looking for music that actually makes an impact, moves something, like helps you, gives you extra strength. It's sort of like you're trying that music on, you know, almost like an exoskeleton to like give you a little extra oomph for something you were doing. I think that words or not words is immaterial. And, you know, I think a lot of music with words can be super powerful because the words are also part of the knowing. So it just depends. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. I was thinking about the movie about Tom Kenyon, who I don't know if you know his work, but he's a music therapist and a brain scientist. And at the beginning of his movie, the movie's called Song of the New Earth. And at the beginning of the movie, he talks about how music without words activates a part of the right side of the brain that is very unique. And so when you're talking, you know, anyone who's in band or who's played orchestral music has been exposed to, and it certainly dancing ballet was exposed to a lot of classical music. And I just think about what a benefit that must be to our brains to be exposed to so much instrumental music that doesn't necessarily have words, that your left side of your brain is like computing, but it's just this sound that's just being taken in as pure vibration. I think that that is also very interesting. Okay, so now we're going to shift gears a little bit, and we're going to go into entrepreneurship as a process of awakening. So how did you get into this work with TPA? Like, what were you doing that led you to this work?
Well, so my dad, again, like, so my father, who is an influence, he was an MBA from Wharton, and he was like a C-level executive, and he actually started his own two or three companies, and all of which went massively into the, you know, just total crash and burn. So we went bankrupt twice. And so it was interesting watching him navigate. Basically, he had, you know, Wharton is regularly in the top MBA schools. I believe that Donald Trump has an MBA from Wharton. Fantastic. So, you know, he has this like top MBA, and he was a C-level executive in various companies, and he founded his own businesses, and they were like serious. Like, there was a big chair company. I remember going to the massive like factory where they were like making these chairs in Orlando, and when we lived in Florida growing up. And so I had exposure to business, but I also watched, you know, he had some challenges and some alcoholism and other stuff. And so it was very clear to me that get an MBA and go be a corporate guy was not the answer to everything. It was not an answer to much that I was looking for, in fact. And so I went to a good college, and I immediately was just on the hunt for meaning. But I also knew I was going to have to figure this whole thing out of how to like eat, you know. But I still, for college, I was just on the hunt for meaning, that, you know. And then after college, where we met, I ended up working at the Park Slope Food Co-op in Brooklyn, New York. And so this was, for me, all that quest for meaning. And I was interested in health, and I was interested in like what, you know, where the food comes from that we eat. I was interested in, you know, just what seems to me the purpose of economics is to make the best possible world for as many people as possible. And the co-op was really an example of that. Is basically like, okay, what we're going to do is we're going to work together. We're going to have access to the best food. It's going to be the best. It's also going to be super healthy, organic, all that stuff. And it's going to be the cheapest. So we're going to have the win. And there's going to be a massive opportunity for community there for those who are interested. And then we're going to create the whole thing so it's sustainable, which means it has to be economically feasible and functional within the context of rent and expenses and utilities and payroll and all that stuff. And the people who founded it, basically, or many of the people who founded it, were right there still. And so I basically got to sit in just my role in the co-op. My role was go work there for a while, then leave and travel, then come back and work in another area. And I just kind of worked everywhere over the course of the time. And as a result, I worked upstairs in the office, and I worked on the newspaper there, and I worked downstairs in receiving, and I worked in this department, I worked in produce, and I just got a front row seat to an unbelievably interesting entrepreneurial enterprise that had also a massive ethical component, and was a serious business, like the highest velocity sales per square foot of shelving of any food store in New York City. So it was
in the nation, I
in
think.
the nation, even. Yeah. So
The
it was
most profitable food store.
it was unbelievable. I mean, it's actually having a hard time right now with COVID, and so it's interesting, like watching it deal with that. But when I was there, which has been a while, it was a front row seat to it was my MBA basically.
Mm-hmm.
So I knew I wasn't going to fit in any sort of corporate path or any really like societally proven path. I knew that. And I knew I also wasn't going to just work at the co-op my whole life. Like that's why I kept leaving and coming back. There was something about it. I was like, I know this isn't my end all be all mission, even though it's unbelievably amazing. So for me, it was an MBA. I watched these people like run this amazing organization that they grew from practically just a few people with like a pallet of goods they ordered from somewhere. I don't know, just real simple. And it was just really clear to me that entrepreneurship was good and it helped. And that given that every day when people wake up, money is interacting with them just like air and water. It's part of the deal, I just intuited and I knew like, okay, I have to figure this out. And I also am not going to plug into some other thing. So I'm going to have to figure it out for myself as far as entrepreneurship goes. And so it has to contain truth. Like, I think that, yeah, and I could go on at length about like transformational people, spiritual people, and how disempowered they are financially or disempowered they are vocationally in terms of the interface of their calling and money transaction. But basically, like, obviously money exists. I view money just like I would view like a knife, so knives can be used as scalpels to do amazing surgical things, and bring health and healing. They can be used in the kitchen to just like take something that would not be very fun to eat whole and cut it up and make it into an amazing food, or they can be used to harm, right? And money is the same way. It's an energy. It's like, it's gasoline, it's electricity. It's got power to it. And how I view most of the people in the transformational community when they're disempowered financially is basically they've decided, probably irrationally or not truly thinking about it, that what we want to do is have the people who aren't empowered spiritually have the most financial power. And we're going to just see how that goes. And I don't think that's a very smart experiment based on the available evidence. And so hopefully what's happening is the transformational people are realizing, actually, this is just another energy, another power, just like meditation is a power of consciousness, or, gasoline, or electricity, or a knife. These are all tools. And how do I want to be in relationship to the tools that actually affect life,
Yeah, I think it's an interesting, the words that come up that have been coming up for a while for me are investment and divestment. And I think that, I see a lot of people in this community, in the transformational community, seeing money as like the oppressor. Like, money itself is the oppressor, not the people who have the money who create the systems that oppress, but money itself is the oppressor. And so we're just not going to deal with that. We're just going to like come over here and do our own thing and try to be humble and try to, I think I get a lot of the images of being a monk and just like, receiving food from the village. Just like, I just want to live so simply. I just want to have the food, but that's not the time that we live in right now. Certainly there are still monks who live by donation, but for most of us doing this work, and there are many of us in the world doing this work, because we need many of us on board doing this work, we need actual money to pay for our mortgages and send our kids to school. And, we need to be feeling abundant, because money is an amplifier, and money does have the ability to help us share the energy that we're bringing in a larger way. I noticed for myself that if I don't charge enough for my work, it's like it's dishonoring to the energy that comes through me that I give to other people. Because I no longer, when I was living in New York and I was just a budding healer working at the co-op and starting my practice, I would get sick a lot when I would do my work, because I was just using my own energy to give to people. And I didn't have a way yet. I didn't have a system for myself to bring energy in from the universe or from my guides or from spirit. And now that I do, and I give that, and it's not me, I'm just like opening myself up to deliver this energy. If I don't receive energy back from the other person, then it's like not an even exchange, and it's not good for anybody, at least of all for me. So it's an interesting thing, a realization to come to. And I think a lot of people are there right now. So TPA is like kind of in this perfect position. And I know you work mostly with therapists who are like traditional therapists, but I do see some of the people in the community do stuff that's a little bit more on the fringe. How did you start working with therapists in the beginning?
So I left the co-op and came back to Nashville, and I had So I went to Stanford in the dot-com boom, and I decided not to study computer science. So I knew there was an unfinished piece there where I had to empower myself technologically as well. I came back and decided, okay, I'm going to become I basically, like, the mantra I had was, I want to be the most useful person. Anyone who I meet, I can help. I want to have such an array of useful skills that they're actually like applicable to where people are and what they need. And I kind of did this, and I went into like a deep musical monkdom, and then I also was deeply studying and learning sort of any skill and so I went top to bottom. I worked in IT, got a lot of skills on actually like running networks and things like that, and then web design, web development, marketing, coding, app development, all these different things. I just decided to dive into copywriting and traffic generation and conversion, and just like went deep and wide as much as I could. I just wanted to be useful. And a therapist found me through an advertisement that I placed in Craigslist, actually. Like, he had thought he'd been hacked, his website had been hacked for reasons of his own story, and he hadn't. It was just like a normal thing that happens when a little bot finds a website and tries to auto create a user that's not real, and he gets like a notification. Nothing's happened, you just ignore it, but he thought someone was hacking his site. But when I was working on the site, I was like, look, there's a lot of things here that we could improve. Is this working for you or not? And he kind of was clear that he wasn't really sure, which meant it wasn't working. Therefore, there was a lot of opportunity there. And so I just started working with him, helped him a lot. He referred me to another therapist, helped her a lot. She referred me to like 5 more therapists, helped them a lot. And it just kind of started flowing like that, to where I realized, okay, I have this is clearly a need, and I have a system. I actually have like a step 1 through 10. We just do all this, and it's working over and over and over and over and over for all these people. So that's where TPA came from. And from then, it was just a matter of like productizing it and then delivering it, fully digitally and nationally. And then building a team around it, and building, and of course, in any evolutionary process, all kinds of other developments happen, and the team itself started to grow and change the thing. And then new ideas came. The more clients we worked with, the more. And so we started with just mental health therapists, but yeah, now we work with a huge array of different types of people. Basically, anyone in the healing profession who's interested in taking their business seriously and wants to be empowered. If you have something that you do that people want or need, and you're willing to lean into the discomfort of like the money thing and the business thing and the technology thing, TPA is like perfectly positioned to like sort of shepherd, and with a lot of, I think, depth and heart and sort of understanding of the challenges. I understand the challenge around money, as like what you were talking about, that it's an oppressor. I mean, I remember just basically like I felt that way, and then eventually I was like, okay, well, I guess I have to deal with this, like, okay. And I remember being like going through, it was almost like a mourning process of, like, oh man, no one's going to just swoop down and save me from this. It's like, I just have to actually deal with it. And yeah, particularly if you're an entrepreneur, the good news is that entrepreneurship at its core is about self-responsibility and gratitude. So if you are doing entrepreneurship correctly, I believe, you are giving up your ability to blame anyone ever again for anything related to your economics or results. And you are therefore, like, so then you have to do stuff. But then when you get the flow going, you're grateful for what comes. That you can't expect anything from other people. It's not, entitlement and entrepreneurship are basically totally not aligned. You cannot be entitled and operate as an entitled person and succeed as an entrepreneur. I don't think so. And that's a healing, because entitlement is it's a plague. It's a mental plague going on, as far as in the United States, at least. I can confirm, having worked with 1,000+ clients and just been watching. So when you rely on yourself, and these, like, I studied a lot of teachers. One of the best teachers I've encountered for entrepreneurship is named Dan Sullivan, the strategic coach, and he calls these the 2 entrepreneurial decisions. So when you give up expecting any value from anyone else until you first create some value, and then that's decision number 1. And number 2 is where you decide to rely on your own self for your own financial security. You're not expecting it from anyone else. So you recognize value exchange and self-responsibility. Those are like the core entrepreneurial decisions.
Mm-hmm.
And what happens when you, and I think he's basically observing laws. I don't think he came up with those ideas. What happens is that's how it works. If you start being an entrepreneur and you conduct yourself expecting other people to provide anything for you, then you're going to fall on your face. And if you expect value before you create value, you're going to be poor, right? Like you're not going to have any exchange. So and it's a humility, right? To be self-responsible and to not expect anything until you're valuable. It's a humility, but it also gets you in this flow. You're out of entitlement into gratitude. You're in self-responsibility mode, which then can bleed into every area of your life where you stop blaming across the board. And that's where freedom comes from. So it's not a coincidence that entrepreneurship offers financial freedom, because it also offers like emotional freedom, spiritual freedom, because you get unhooked from all the blaming and the victimization, and you get in this position where you're like, okay, well, how big do I want my results to be? How much of an impact do I want to have? How far do I want to take my ideas? How many people do I want to impact? How much do I want to learn? And it starts to open up like that. And how much money do I want to make?
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if that's an answer to your question, but there's an entrepreneurial riff.
I loved it. It was beautiful. Oh yeah, it was like music, what you were just doing. I feel like I was like riding on this wave with you through an ocean. It is an awakening process in itself. This process that you have designed and put together. I think the spirit like went like this when you said this word, self-responsibility. I think self-responsibility is, for me, just the most important sort of commitment to make for oneself and for your community. And I have a question about that, but there's this chatting box over here. Sorry. We're going to get back to that one. We're going to go with self-responsibility. So how is it that you feel like you're able to call forward self-responsible individuals to join your program? Because I think that is clear in the community that self-responsibility maybe isn't something that everyone's mastered, but it's something that everyone is committed to trying to be self-responsible. And I think that is really at the base of so much clarification and so much empowerment, is that self-responsibility. So what do you think it is about TPA that is able to call that forward?
So I wouldn't necessarily say that we call it forward. I would say that people come in because they know they need to do something about what they want with their practice. Mm-hmm. So they're in a position where, like, the people who decide to jump into something like TPA are motivated to some degree to commit resources and time and energy to make a change, to make an improvement, right? Mm-hmm. So then immediately, like right at the beginning of the process, I introduced that concept. Mm-hmm. And so some people are kicking and screaming with it, like, mm-hmm. For sure. I mean, I've seen all of the responses at this point. Like we've got, I think right now we've had, 1,400 people who've started TPA. So I've seen the people who freak out and run in the opposite direction because that's the last thing they want. And they may not even consciously realize why that's the last thing they want, but it actually has to do with their marriage situation, or who knows, something else. But the self-responsibility it's one of those things where you start eating the salad, and then all of a sudden, like, you have to change your whole friend network, and you can't even go to all those, like all kinds of changes happen when you make a change that it starts to ripple, and it just shakes the foundations of everything that's untrue. Self-responsibility is like that. It's a law, it's a truth, where if you start to be a self-responsible person, you can't hang out with people who are complaining all the time about because complaining is basically blaming other people. It's like being powerless. It's like, no, okay, now we got to do something about it. And it just starts to ripple through. So I think part of it is just this, it's an intentional design of the program, because that's ultimately what TPA is about, is guiding people who weren't trained in entrepreneurship and probably they just accidentally became entrepreneurs. Like, it wasn't necessarily what they wanted to be, helping people with this specific modality, whether it's mental health or body work or speech language pathology or audiology or naturopathy, whatever that's called, naturopathic medicine, or, you know, spiritual transformation, hypnotherapy, like whatever it is, they want to help people with that. But then, oh God, I'm an entrepreneur. They don't even realize until they're in TPA sometimes. And then I say, like, oh, by the way, I want you to stop thinking of yourself as I'm a hypnotherapist and start thinking about I'm an entrepreneur with a specialty in hypnotherapy. I'm an entrepreneur and I deliver X service to XYZ people, you know? So if you're seeing that in the community, that's a product of the container that's been created and the fact that if you're an entrepreneur, it's basically waiting for you to pick it up. Like self-responsibility is waiting there anyway. So to the degree that we're succeeding in facilitating people coming into TPA and becoming entrepreneurs more than they are like a practitioner of a modality, if I'm first an entrepreneur, I'm delivering this particular value through this particular methodology or modality or whatever. Oh, self-responsibility is right there. And so that's why it's happening. It's because it's endemic to being an entrepreneur and because it's part of the design of the program to encourage people to just embrace it. Like it's going to be good for you.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. It's one of the things that I value the most, and I'm trying to redesign my whole business to position myself to making that sort of a foundation for people. Like you know, part of the work I'm doing with you, and also I'm doing a similar, not a similar at all, but like a different type of own your value work with Lee Harris, kind of in tandem. You guys are kind of the yin and yang here of this inquiry for me, and really giving myself permission to figure out who I want to work with, like who really excites me in my work, not who would benefit from my work, because there are many people that would benefit from the work that I do or what I'm creating, but who gives me a lot of joy. And the difference, the edge there for me is the people who are willing to become self-responsible, the people who are not asking me to carry them on their path, but the people who are like, I'm here, I know I got some stuff to work with and some stuff to heal, but I am like ready to put in the work. Like I want to put in the work, and I'm not sitting in that entitlement or sitting in that, like, I deserve the universe to give something to me because I'm so special, make the pain go away. But like, I'm willing to address the untruths in my life that are keeping me suffering so that I can walk myself out of suffering, so that I can help other people walk out of their suffering. Right. And I think it's a really interesting fine line between dissolving entitlement, that, you know, you don't deserve for someone to swoop in and rescue you, but you are worth all the love and belonging and all the beauty the universe has to offer. Like, it's this, I think deserve is the wrong word I'm using here, but to release the entitlement that like someone else is to blame, or that someone else will come in and make it all better. That very the young part of us that just wants to be rescued. And I think women especially are acclimated to this. Women are taught, like, wait for your prince in shining armor. He's going to come and swoop you up and save you from all these bad feelings, right? Or all these hard times. And I remember, I'm going to speak of this one specific instance that I had. I love that I have the whale right behind me, because this is a whale story. So I went to a place once called the Whale Watch House. And that's literally the name of this beach house on the Oregon coast. My friend had given me keys to this house for the weekend to spend with my partner and my family and some friends. And it's called the Whale Watch House because it had this beautiful veranda to look out onto the ocean. It was right where the whales migrated. And we were there right at whale migrating season. And everyone went out. I'd never seen a whale before. And it had been this big thing, right? I always wanted to see a whale. So all these people kept going out to the porch and being like, oh my God, I just saw this amazing breaching whale. It was great. Oh my God, you know? And I kept going out and being like, where? And looking. And by God, we were there for 3 days and I never saw a whale. I never saw a whale. And I was almost in tears by the day that we were leaving. I was standing on this porch being like, it's me. Like, I love you. I dream about you. Where are my whales? Why can't I see whales? And I had this like moment of awakening. And I said, the ocean doesn't owe me a whale sighting. The ocean doesn't owe me shit, right? The ocean does not owe me a whale sighting. It would be lovely. It would fill my heart if I saw a whale today, but it owes me nothing. I'm not, it is not required. I'm so in awe of your beauty. I'm sorry for being so upset about not seeing a whale. So I was telling this to a friend later, and she said, well, but you are worthy of all the beauty the world has, right? So there is this feeling of balance there, where of course I'm worthy to be a successful entrepreneur. I'm worthy to have my teaching shared with millions. I'm worthy to show up and be loved and be accepted and feel belonging, right? And I'm not owed anything, right? I can earn it and I can work towards it. And so I think that's the thing, you know, when I found your program, and I hilariously found your program, not through you, but through one of your advertisements, I had been on the search for, I knew I needed, you know, I've been moaning and moaning for the last 2 years of this new business, being like, I know a lot of stuff and I'm willing to learn a lot of stuff about the technology end of this. But the one thing I know nothing about is how to structure a business and make it successful and do advertising, marketing, reach out to a larger audience, because this business was designed to scale. Like, that's the whole purpose of why I'm doing this and not just these one-on-one sessions. And, you know, I kept thinking, I gotta make enough money so I can hire someone to do this for me. Like, continuously trying to like circumnavigate myself around like the discomfort of learning this, how to be an entrepreneur, right? Yeah. And it's funny because all these people, I kept going on their posts and I kept signing up for their newsletters or their free webinars, or being like, okay, what's this person offering? You know, the algorithm of Facebook and Instagram and Google figured me out. They're like, I know you, you're a coach and you're not very successful and you're looking for more clients. Is that what's going on with you? We got you covered. So all of a sudden, like, all these different like people who are doing these like web-based, you know, like grow your business fast sort of things started popping up. And I'm just like exhaustedly like plugged in my dining room, like listening to these things and just being like, and they're so like flashy and it's all like get rich quick and like, you know, like sell your course before you even write your course. And like, just my people are making millions, like out of the gate, you know, all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, this is not what I need. Like, this is not what I'm talking about. Like, I know that there's some deep transformational learning I need to go through and healing I need to go through to really step forward in my business in a heartfelt and honest way. And so when I clicked on TPA, that's the energy signature that I got. And I was like, I mean, it helped that I saw you, right? I was like, oh, it's Matt Coffman. Well, it's a Matt Coffman. I know I can sign up for it. But even talking to your people, you know, and like doing the discovery call or the entry call, I was like, I think the word that he said was like, it's like grad school for business. It's like school for business, you know, to help you grow your, I was like, that's what I need. I need school. Like, I need the structure of school to hold me in this way and to give me these lessons that I need that are very specific to what I need to grow. Because I was also on the brink of going back for my like master's or PhD in like counseling or psychology or something. I was like, something's got to give. Like, this is not working, but I don't need more skills on how to help people. I need more skills on how to help myself have a business. So I'm learning so much from this transformation through entrepreneurship that relates directly to the work that I do with my community here, which is so interesting. And I think self-responsibility is the key. That I so honor the amount of self-responsibility that is called upon. I know you say don't call it to you, but you call it up in the people that come in. I don't think that you can walk into TPA and be successful and not like take that advice on mindset to heart and the advice to like show up for yourself and be responsible.
Totally.
Along those lines though, I do wonder about the people who like completely fritz out on the process, because I know for myself, when I enter a transformational process with someone, sometimes like their shit like falls apart, like their marriages end, they leave their jobs, like these kind of things happen. And I've had to grapple with that for a while with, you know, helping people to hold that container to continue to move forward as their everything, all the untruths start to unravel around them, which I think is a necessary process. We have to be prepared for that. And also being able to get paid for my services, because I've had the instance where people, you know, they leave their job and they're suddenly like, well, I know that I said that I would do this process with you, but suddenly I can't afford it. So is there a way that you sort of safeguard TPA from that sort of unraveling process that people go through?
Sure.
I mean, you guys didn't have to sign a contract. This is a very personal question.
Yeah, no. This is turning into a hilarious marketing webinar, but I didn't intend that, audience of Marissa's, but here we are anyway. So, yeah. So basically, there's a number of ways that we built it. First off, the basic energy is like I imagine there's two sides to the relationship when someone joins TPA. So there's us over here, and then there's the person over here. Now, we want it to, they have to come they have to start moving, because where they are by definition isn't where they want to be.
Mm-hmm.
So if they don't move, then they're not adding anything, no muscles, no skills, no new insights, nothing. So they have to move. They have to take action. They have to do things, learn things, grow. And it's just like with children where like the parents, you have to find that edge of how much can it walk, the baby walk, but then like, you don't want, you got to be there to catch it or whatever, but like but it has to walk. Like you can't just like do the walking for it. No, don't walk. You're very weak. You shouldn't do that. Like there's some interaction there. And that's, so there's obviously the people in TPA, they're adults, they're skilled, but entrepreneurially they're babies basically for a lot of them, and so we have to get their muscles going, and that's going to look like calling them to show up for themselves. Now, yeah, there's an investment financially, and that investment isn't like $5. And the reason for that is because first off, we have a serious thing we're running. It's like a lot of people. We do a lot for people. I feel that the value we give is 100 times what we charge, and it's off the charts. So it's easy, so good, but it's still like, it's a significant investment for a lot of people. It's way less than their actual educations, which didn't equip them at all to deal with the economy. So in some ways, I feel like we should be charging exactly what their universities charge, but we don't. So cool. Then we have a contract, which is another form of like, okay, and we have the contract because I used to not have a contract, and I watched people yank me around in all kinds of ways, and it wasn't in their interests.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, so let's get really clear what you're agreeing to. Let's get rid of the like blame and all that story. We still occasionally have people who try to do this, but mostly not. This is what you're getting. This is what it is. This is the agreement. Let's be clear. And that's a gift of business. Mm-hmm. So I think, again, in the transformational community, you can think business is bad, like, oh, it's bad. No, there's actually reasons that they do things the way they do them, So for example, being clear, having things written in a contract, that actually is we can both relax. This is what's happening. You're self-responsible. We are offering exactly what we're saying. We will deliver on that and be of integrity that way. And cool. So we can both just get on with it. That's mm-hmm. the contract piece, right? Mm-hmm. I would say also the payment. So instead of accepting payment after, if I go to McDonald's, I have to pay and then get the food. Or mm-hmm. if I go to Amazon, I have to pay now and then it comes in the mail a couple of days from now. Like there's some wisdom that's how most businesses function. Mm-hmm. Apple, if I want to get a computer, I have to give them the money before they give me the computer. I don't get to take the computer, go work on it for a few weeks and then pay them later. So cash flow, like how businesses are designed so that they actually function, particularly if you have a team and you want to have a team and you want to grow something powerful. Well, these people are getting paid and they have families to feed and they're giving their time. So we have to figure out a way to get all of this working together. And so there's some wisdom in the way that businesses run, right? So the design, the invitation, the commitment, the financial commitment, the contract, the then entering in and just constantly trying to get people to take that step. If they take that step, we're right there, And so we do that in our support. Like I used to offer all one-on-one calls. And wow. I found that, in fact, they were way less successful. Like the people across the board, the average of success was way less. And instead, if we have people be part of a community and have all these different levels of support, and there is a little bit of one-on-one, but it's in a different format. But if they have all these levels of support, a lot of which is with a witness, with an audience, they have to show up as their best selves. Mm-hmm. They can't hide out and like run their patterns, where if it's just you and me on the phone, someone's having a bad day, we can get nothing done. And it feels like to them, we got something done, but really they were just blaming, Now we're in a public format. Now we have a community. Well, guess what? The community has other aspects. For example, there's wisdom transmitted at different levels as someone who's been successful is telling people, and that's causing people to believe it's possible. And other people have learned a specific thing. They share it. Oh, I've never thought of that. They implement it. They get successful that way. So there's this whole dynamic that comes out of that that's way better than a one-on-one transmission that I used to do. So there's the accountability piece of having a community. We have other layers of locked in ways to, if people if they decide to jump in, suddenly they're met and held and supported and cheered on. And, so it starts by knowing what is actually best, because that's your job. If you have expertise, and you really think about like basically if you're in a business, you're trying to take someone from point A to point B, and point B is what they say they want. It's not what I want, it's what they want. So my job as a business is to identify a group of people who are at a point A who want to get to a point B, that I can actually be the bridge to speed it up or to guarantee that they get there, or to just help them get there the best way, right? There's some, like or they couldn't ever get there on their own, and I'm the bridge that is their only shot, right? Like somehow people are here, they want to go here, and a business is the thing that connects them. And if you think about business that way, that works for, a food operation, it works for a computer place, it works for media, like it works for whatever, you know what I mean? It's someone's having experience A, they want to get to experience B, and the business is a facilitation of that. So if you truly believe and understand and have the expertise and are constantly studying this, that you understand point A, point B, and all the mechanics to get someone from there, then from there you just have to hold yourself to conduct what's best for them. And it isn't what they think is best, it's what you know is best. And being really clear about the difference and holding to the actual one that works is part of the way entrepreneurship grows you as an entrepreneur, right? Because people, no, it's supposed to be this way. It's like, well, not really, actually, trust me. Like, and some people, the people who don't want to do it are not your clients. And so you arrange the whole thing. It's like, all right, here's the deal. Here's what we're going to do. We're going to go from point A to point B. You want to get to point B, cool. Here's what we're going to do. If you're interested, come on board. And so we try to have that entire process from point A to the working relationship so that they get to point B clear to them. And then we hold them to what we know works best. And that's what I would encourage anyone with an expertise trying to deliver value. It comes from your confidence in how to get them to point B. And if they knew, they wouldn't need you. Therefore, by definition, they need you if they're in relationship with you as a client. So trust yourself, trust what is best, and don't compromise that just to help them feel more comfortable or help them not be mad at you sometimes. Your job is just as much to challenge them as to support them, and to understand it's both, not just support, not just challenge. I think that helps me relax into yes, I know it's like some of the things we do in TPA, it's not necessarily fun. Like, it's not necessarily easy, but it's worth it. It'll be good. In the end, you'll be super happy you did it, And then, people go through that period of kicking and screaming or just reluctant or frustrated, but then they come out the other side and it's like, wow, they're transformed. And that's why we do what we do. Watching that, it's all worth it,
I feel like it's so clarifying too. It's like the mist lifts when you can see that path, that clear path before you. And that clarity, the way that even you describe the point A, the point B, and the bridge, it's super clear that you're here, you want to get here, you walk this way. We've constructed this perfectly constructed bridge for you. And I think that the reason we're talking so much about this is I think that pretty much everyone in my community needs to hear this message, because a lot of people experience this sort of mistiness around sort of, what is it? I know what I'm doing, but what am I really offering, and who am I offering it to, and how do I get them there? And how, there's just a lot of confusion around the whole thing. And I'm finding myself even, I'm redoing my website kind of in process right now. So if any of you want to look at my website, there's some changes there. And just to reflect more the inner changes that I'm going through. And I think one of the things I realized is that it's not our job to convince anyone that they need what we have to offer, right? So if my business is called Full Awakening, my website used to be designed to explain to someone why they should go through an awakening process. But that's not my job. And I don't really want to do that. I want to work with people who are already going through an awakening process and want some sort of structure with which they can enter that process with integrity and clarity and depth. So it's a beautiful thing. It's a beautiful thing. And I think that this is a good line of questioning. So I do have one question for you though, since you said now 1,300 or 1,400 people have gone through your process. And I'm always interested, and I think a lot of people in this community who are also, a lot of them teachers and, healers, and are in the process of scaling up their business and serving more people. How do you keep yourself human to yourself and to others? How do you handle the gratitude that comes towards you, or the projection? Like if someone accomplishes something and then they're like, oh, Matt, you're the one, you did it. You helped me do this, instead of claiming it as their own and being like, wow, thank you. I'm really growing here. Do you experience that in TPA? Because I think a lot of people are afraid as they become more visible to people that they're teaching and leading. I know I've experienced some of this myself, but that projection onto the teacher or the person who seems to be carrying the teaching or being the bridge or constructing the bridge. Do you feel like you have a process for being with gratitude in a way that feels healthy to you?
I kind of feel like this is really a fear of success question in disguise.
Mm.
So what happens in my experience, and this is again, it's like no one's going to swoop down and cause this to happen. So you're in control.
Mhm.
So as you scale up at the speed you want and the speed you can handle. And what happens is you have these relationships with clients, and each, like just from a business point of view, so this is all business, the more you, whoever is in the closest relationship with clients in their target market with what they're working on and what they're offering, who is able to really see how they respond, the questions they ask, the things that they want, what they say, all this stuff, you just keep improving what you're doing. So the
Mhm.
more you improve what you're doing, it's going to include things like making sure that people don't come at you with projection if that's part of the problem in your market.
Mhm.
Um, so you get to control the speed at which you grow because it's your business, and you can turn your marketing off, and you can add more team, take away team, you can add pieces to what you do, you can change the format, you can change the system, the structure, whatever. You get to guide it, and the best way to guide it is by actually working with people. So if that comes up, there's something in the way that you're delivering the value that's causing it to come up. So
Mhm.
if you're getting projected on like that, then you just have to work with it to make sure that that doesn't happen, or as best you can. So, things happen. Like if you take 1,000 people or 100 people or 10 people, there's going to be 10 totally different responses. There's going to be the dream student, there's going to be the nightmare, and there's going to be 8 people in the middle, kind of at different levels of like terrible to work with, amazing to work with. Like just people are spread out everywhere, right? So like that's just part of it. And you also have to be able to see that and understand that it's just anytime you work with a large enough group, you're going to get a whole spread of experiences. Some of that's unavoidable. You can't get rid of it. You just have to accept it. And you have to accept that there's going to be people who think you suck or hate you or don't get anywhere. And it's really their fault, because from the 1,000 people over here who've gotten results that these are like the bottom 0.1% of people who are just the complaining people. You understand, because you have the confidence of your own expertise. It still sucks. It's
Mhm.
not fun. So to some degree, there's going to be this spread. Another level is that you get to guide the process at the speed you want and the way that you want. So you're not going to be overwhelmed with this if you don't want to be. If you want to be overwhelmed with it, then do it. Go for it and see what happens. And the other thing is that you're going to be able to tailor and tweak and improve whatever you're doing to help that not happen as much. So at this point, no, I don't really deal with like people projecting onto me, because it's a co-creative process, and we've just wired that in so well. And
Mhm.
the way that TPA is today, I've honed it and honed it and honed it and honed it, and I'm making it again right now. I'm re-honing it right now in this quarter. By the end of the quarter, I'll have redone a bunch of it, because it's an evolving organism, just like all of life. Like your business is growing and changing through these relationships. So that's what I would say is, number one, recognize that that's actually fear of success. Number two, go back to the no entitlement, self responsibility. You get to build this the way you want. So
Mhm.
those kinds of fears, I understand them, but you'd be surprised how like they come up at one time with one person, then you can address it, and then it's going to be different the next time, and you can tweak that, and then eventually you'll get to where you've just really built something beautiful that works well. And the only time anything like that comes up is an unavoidable, that person just does that, that's just how they are, and don't take it personally and deal with it however you want to deal with it.
Yeah. The Yelp for Yelpers. I've always wanted there to be like, when you see those really bad reviews on Yelpers, I want there to be a Yelp for the Yelper that's like, dude, this guy says this about everyone.
Well, this is why basically everyone, the more entrepreneurs there are, like people just get like, oh, that's that guy who complains about everything. So then, you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
entrepreneurs aren't going to be affected by Yelp reviews, because you get it. You've been on the receiving end. We
Yeah.
certainly have. So that's the good news, is that the more entrepreneurs there are, the less Yelp will be affected, at
Yeah.
least the negative reviews. Yeah.
Yeah. And just, I think for everyone in whatever work they're doing, as they're gaining, as they're being called towards more visibility in their work, which I think I hear this so much in the people I work with and in my community of just like, I think it's time for me to scale. I think it's time for me to be more visible. And there's that resistance, that edge of resistance. And some of that is definitely fear of success. And I think some of it's just the fear of coming under fire, fear of criticism. And, that's just going to have to.
But that's a fear of success. The fear of, I also had that.
Mm-hmm.
And I would say I was like pretty paralyzed by that for quite a while. And guess what? The more success I have, the more I get blasted in all kinds of ways. I remember the very first time we took like nationwide advertising live, someone made fun of my hair within like a day, for my picture. I was just like, damn, dude. Like, oof. Someone just like punched me right in the crotch is what it felt like. I mean, it was like, damn. like that was a nightmare, you know? But then
Yeah.
it was like, okay, well, this is what I was afraid of. And honestly, it's not that big a deal. Like, it's just some idiot, you know? And it was such a healing getting that. It's just like, dude, like, why you gotta make fun of my hair? It's just it's my hair. I like, it's a picture on the, I mean, oh, like I felt it so for like a little, you know, for like an hour. I was like, oh God. But then I realized this is exactly what I was afraid of. This is why I was playing small. This is the consequence of playing bigger. This is great. Like,
Yeah.
and by the way, I'm still totally fine. All the people who love me love me. My friends are my friends. And oh, by the way, I'm getting sales, helping people. Okay. You know what I mean? So that, like, it's actually good. Anytime you have a fear like that, the faster you can engage it, the better, because like the paralysis is what makes it bad. Going and getting someone to tell you you're like literally the Antichrist when you know you're doing good work is really, it's very affirming. You know, believe it or not.
I love that. I think it's just like rip the Band-Aid off, just like get it done with, get yourself out there, get yourself the
Yeah.
criticism or whatever you're fearing. People are going to say you're fat or that you're whatever.
Yeah.
Whatever
If you're actually delivering value, yes. If you are a scam artist, bad, don't do it. But if you're actually delivering value, yeah, then get it over with as fast as possible.
Yeah. Okay, I have one last question for you. And this is a personal question about your practice of awakening, because as we all know, awakening can happen in this moment or that moment, or, you know, we have this experience, it's expansive, but to really live in a world in which you're continuously waking up into presence, we all have to have some sort of structure or practice around that. So at this point in your life, what would you say is your personal practice that you practice?
So I would say that I've tried to build my entire life. Like this is another gift of entrepreneurship, is that again, in its highly articulated mode. So you have to pay your dues, and like I definitely did, and I lived very imbalanced, and I worked all the time for a while, but I'm at a point now where I can design my team, my client relationships, my, you know, all of it is like I have intentionality that I can bring to bear. So I try to have my whole life be my practice. That's my, so I help helpers. I empower people who then ripple out and empower more people. So I'm trying to create a transformational revolution. You know, that's what actually I'm trying to do. That feels like a practice. That feels like a spiritual practice, right? So so when I'm working, I feel like I'm doing my spiritual practice. I'm doing my community service. I'm doing all those things woven in. Obviously, dealing with people in relationships is constantly stimulating and causing me to look at shadow and grow and all that stuff. I have personal practices. I meditate. I practice a pretty strict vipassana, like pretty stark, you know, just like very on the level of the vibrations, paying attention to the three conditions as the Buddha teaches, and just trying to like see that. Music is major for me. I'm on a quest of mastery. And so I play the guitar very seriously and endeavor to always play the guitar better tomorrow than I did today. And that's a daily practice that I try to maintain. And it's a vehicle for me to apply all the truths, you know, so goal setting and presence at the same time. And that's sort of what I feel that there's a lot of wisdom from the East and there's a lot of wisdom from the West. And the wisdom from the East might look like meditation, and the wisdom from the West might look like goal setting, and marrying them is very powerful, you know? So yeah, some combination. I also have like I honestly could go for like an hour on this, and I don't want to freak people out, but basically, yes, everything. My goal is to have every second be part of the awakening process, and I want to look for anywhere that I could hone and improve and cause that to be more serving why we're here. And that's sort of how I approach my life. Yeah.
I just have to, Matt, I have to bow down to you. You're such an inspiration to me. Thank you so much for taking time out of your day to share your stories with me and to answer all of my questions about your business. I really, really appreciate it. I really, honestly, always such a pleasure. Thank you, thank you, thank you. And is it okay if I link TPA down here below the video? Are you okay with that?
Yeah, for sure.
Okay.
Of course.
Because I think people will want to know. I've been enthusiastically singing your praises, of course, to many people, but we'll link you down here. And I just thank you so much, sweetheart. I really appreciate you and your presence in the world.
Likewise, I love what you're doing. I love that we're able to support each other. And thank you for giving me the chance to share. I really don't usually do these kinds of, you know, I don't usually talk about my childhood or whatever. But it's nice to be able to just have a nice conversation, let it range around, and in support of your community, very happy to do it. I apologize if I was a bit intense with any of the entrepreneurial nudges, but hey, it's part of my job. So
no, you were perfect. You were perfectly yourself and honest, and I so appreciate your vulnerability and your excitement and your dedication, and your intensity is very much needed and enlivening. So thank you. Thank you
cool.
very much.
Thank you. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you guys for watching this episode. We'll bring you Stories of Awakening episode 20 next month. And I hope that you're having a beautiful summer wherever you are, or winter if you're down below the equator. And we will be seeing you soon. Thank you so much. Bye.
Hold me now, help me grow. Hold me now, help me grow. I become and I am inside you. What I am, I receive inside you. Hold me now, help me grow. Hold me now, help me grow. My gift is to believe inside you. In this joy I receive inside you. Hold me now, help me see. Hold me now, help me see. I am all that I am thanks to you. Humbled here where I stand thanks to you.